session, we will be discussing digital storytelling. As soon as we speak story, that fascinates us. But digital story is a newer term to all of us, and we must be wondering what is a digital story. When I speak of digital story, I don't always mean that it's a fictional story. So in the era of digital India and adding digital technology, integrating digital technology in teaching learning process, when I speak of digital storytelling, I mean the integration of various kinds of digital resources in a teacher's daily lesson plan, in a teacher's daily lessons which she teach to her class, her students. So it also clarifies that whenever we use digital resources, it is not that we are replacing teachers with digital resources or with digital technology. We have digital resources, we have audio, video and different kind of material. It doesn't mean that the role of teacher is minimized or teacher is being replaced by this digital technology. We don't have to just play a digital resource and sit idle. So a teacher, when she needs to integrate digital technology with her teaching learning process, she also needs to reinvent her role as a teacher, and then she should integrate this digital technology in the teaching learning process. She has to engage digitally with the resource, with the lesson, to her class, to her students. That is why I am calling this digital storytelling. Be it any subject, be it language, be it economics, any other subject of social science like history, geography, science. So digital story is relevant with each and every subjects. So let us first understand what do we mean by a digital story when we are talking of digital story in a teacher's daily lesson planning. If we look at this slide, the meaning of digital story is very, very clear. Digital story is e-text, video, audio, voice narration, music, sound effects, images and graphics, singly or in combination, to create a fictional or non-fictional media or multimedia narration. So that means that digital story is there to create a fictional media or multimedia narration. A teacher has to narrate or build the whole story over a concept to teach that concept in a more meaningful manner. There are various different forms of digital stories or digital contents around which we can create a digital story. If we look at this slide, we will very well understand what are the different forms of digital contents around which we can create digital stories. So there are mind maps, simulations, audio, video, advertisements, interactive media, infographic, photographs, animations, cartoons, slideshows, diagrams, charts, graphs and flow diagrams. So all this, the list which I displayed here in this slide, are different forms of digital content around which we can create digital stories. So if we look at this slide, this is an example of a mind map. So the mind map in the center depicts coal mine in 19th century Britain, and all the sub-contents sub-concepts related to the main concepts are branching out from the main concepts. So, if a teacher wants to develop, wants to create a lesson plan, so she can use this mind map to develop his lesson plan, and she can very meaningfully and easily, smoothly unfold the main concept, relating it to the sub concepts. So, that is how a mind map may be used by a teacher to create a digital story in the classroom. There is another example of mind map which can be seen in this slide. So, this slide is on living organism, and all the other components related to the this concept living organism are showing in this slide unfold using this mind map tool, mind map option. So, there are different free and open source mind mapping software. Using those, a teacher can create fascinating mind maps to unfold the concept she is teaching in a class. One of the free and open source software or tool to create mind map is FreeMind, and there is another Free Plane. And if you Google free and open source mind mapping tools, you will get a whole lot of softwares which will help you, which will facilitate you creating these mind maps. And a teacher can plan her lesson or develop and unfold concept using this mind mapping software by creating mind maps on these softwares. So, simulation is another form of digital content. Simulations are also very fascinating. There are a teacher teaching any subject encounters certain concepts which are very abstract to relate. Students feel it very difficult to relate to that particular concept. For example, in biology, we teach students about the internal organs of the body, but we cannot show them the internal organs of the society. Here comes the simulation solution. So, there are apps. One of the app is Biodigital Human. If you install that app, you can very well make student understand how heart look like as an internal organ of the body, how it functions, what are its functions, and likewise other organs of the body. We also teach our students about universe, that the universe is endless, and there are celestial bodies in the universe. There are systems in the universe like solar system, galaxies, and the earth is a sphere. But students find it difficult to comprehend how earth, to which they see as flat, can be comprehended as spherical. So, here comes the role of simulation. If you have visited planetariums, so that planetarium gives you an experience of simulation, simulated universe, simulated bodies in the universe. So, that is how we can integrate simulations in the daily teaching learning process of students, and it depends where the simulation is required and where to make concept near to real, because they cannot really see always see the abstract concept we are teaching. So, simulations give students a near to real experience of teaching learning, an abstract concept. Then we also deal with big data. So, where statistics and data comes in We can also use digital stories. We can build digital stories around a digital content. We can use map and show the statistics of a map. If we see this slide which is there, so it shows, it makes us clear the educational scenario of our country. Most of the times we keep cribbing that Japan has reached there, Italy has reached there, and most of the countries are far much ahead in using in the kind of educational implementations, educational initiatives which are going on in the country. But if we again relook this slide, we will see that what kind of challenges we face when we want to reach out to the larger population of our country. We in our country have 28 states, 7 union territories, 1.49 million schools, 8.5 million teachers, 48 school boards, 24 crore 85 lakhs 68,702 children in school system, and 96,007 secondary schools covered under ICT at School scheme. So when we see this big data on a map of India, we will amazed to see that how much challenging a task it is to reach out to this many big population of our country when we take up any initiative. And that is not only about statistics. This population is also not homogeneous. This population is heterogeneous. They belong to different socio-economic strata. They belong to different cultural and ethnic groups. They belong to different linguistic groups. So if we want to reach out to them using technology, so these are all the challenges which we face in our country. So this is another example, if you look at this slide, of an infographic, and in this infographics branches of psychology have been depicted. And in this slide, this is an example of flow diagram. So flow diagram or flow charts are another example of digital resources around which we can create a digital story. If we look at this slide, so it shows the French society, the stratification of French society just before the eve of French Revolution. And if we create a story around this digital content, we can discuss with our students that the stratification of society was as clergy, nobility, big businessmen, merchants, court officials, lawyers, etc. Then peasants and artisans, and small peasants, landless labor, and servants. So there were 3 states which existed in France just before the eve of French Revolution, and the previous 2 stratification of society, that is clergy and nobility, they enjoyed all the privileges. But the 3rd state, which comprised of 3 sorts of social stratification, they were the most deprived people. The first stratification, that is businessmen, merchants, court officials, lawyers, etc. They were from intelligentsia class. They were generating income for the country, but they were also came in the 3rd state. And the most who suffered were the 2nd and 3rd strata of the 3rd state, that is peasant and artisans, and small peasants, landless laborers, and servants. So there is a fascinating story about the 3rd state. when these people, this deprived population was making a procession, and they were passing through the palace of the king Louis XVI, of the then king of the France. So the king and queen were watching that procession from their balcony, and the procession, the people in the procession were shouting bread, bread, because they were deprived of this basic necessity of their life. They were dying in hunger, so they were shouting bread, bread. And this queen exclaimed that if they don't have bread, why don't they eat cakes? We don't know whether really the queen uttered this phrase, uttered these words, but this is the story. But it indicates, the story indicates that the king and queen were so ignorant about the condition of their subjects that they were not realizing that how they are being deprived of the basic necessities of their life. So like that, in these circumstances, the French Revolution broke. So around this infographic, which I demonstrated in the slide, we can create, we can generate a digital story, we can generate a story, and a person who is not of history background will not forget the stratification of French society just before the eve of French Revolution. So if we look at the slide, this shows a timeline. When we deal with chronology in history, when we speak of chronology, chronological course of event in a given time span, then timelines are very good resource, very good digital content to deal with that chronology, to indicate the course of event as per the chronology. So timelines can also be used to create fascinating digital stories in a class. So if we look at this slide, this is for very small children, for primary children. If we look at here, there are kitchen utensils hidden in this picture, in this diagram, and we can make students learn the different kitchen utensils which are used in the kitchen using such digital content, and then can generate learning, and that will interest children to learn about the utensils in the kitchen. If we look at this slide, in this picture there are hidden a lot of sports and game objects, articles. So if we want to build a digital story around this image, we can discuss with the students what are the different games and sports which are there, in which sports India and the other nations won medal in the Olympics and other competitions, and what are the play articles, what are the rules and regulations of a play and sports. So all such discussions we can weave around using this particular image, using this particular content. So there is another drawing which in which prehistoric period has been depicted, and there are modern element hidden in the image. So if you want to make students learn about the prehistoric period, you can digitally engage them and ask them to be engaged in the game by identifying the modern elements which are hidden in this drawing. So that is how we can we can generate digital stories around different kind of digital contents. So these are some content, digital content, which I demonstrated here in the form of infographic, diagrams, mind maps, images which were created. but there are other forms of digital content around which a teacher can generate a discussion and make teaching learning very fascinating and interesting. So I would also like to show you some of the videos. It will take time to open, so let me show you one movie which is a Oscar award winning movie. So we have watched this movie, and when you look at the movie, you will notice that only two phrases had been used in this movie, and the whole movie was based on just music and expressions and shots on which the movie maker wanted to focus. But without having any dialogue, this story tells so much about human values, and a teacher can discuss, generate a story around this story to tell children about human values. He can ask questions, what they learned from this story, what they learned from this movie, what messages they gathered from this movie. And when I use this story in training programs, the audience come up with a lot of messages, different messages, which they receive by watching this movie. The name of the movie is The Other Pair, and this is an Egyptian film. Like that movie, there are other interesting content for the small children. If we discuss earliest stories and inventions, so we can tell the process of invention and discovery which happened, which took place in the past, and we don't even know the name of the inventors. So I would like to play this small short animation to showcase the discovery of fire. It is taking some time to be played. Let me try a different one. The movie is not playing, the small animation was not playing. So let us see this small cartoon strip, comic strip, which is there, and how to kill acidity. It is on how to kill acidity. And in the using comics, we can actually see how acidity can be killed. We can get rid of acidity, the home remedy of getting rid of acidity. So this was about how videos and small movies just of a duration of a few minutes can communicate, can convey big messages, can convey a lot of messages to students. So animations are very fascinating for a child to look at, and they get fascinated by the animations. There is a very cute animation on discovery of fire, which I would like to show here. There is some problem in that video. There are promotional content also. In our previous discussion on NROER, National Repository of Open Educational Resources, which houses a lot of digital resources to be integrated into teaching learning process as digital stories. So if we want to see in a snapshot about NROER, what all which is offered by NROER, this National Repository, if we see a small promotional video on that, we can very easily understand what all is offered in the national repository. So when we look at this promotional video, it tells us in 30 seconds what all exists in this repository. It tells us that resources on NROER is shared under CC by SA licensing policy. It tells us that resources on NROER in multiple languages. Resources on NROER are there for universal design of learning. They are there for deaf and mute children. They are there in sign languages also. There are different variety of digital resources. There are different e-library on NROER. One can become partner on NROER. Individuals and institutions can become partners on NROER, and it is about building a community of all those who care for education. So that is how in the 30 seconds using a digital promo we can tell a lot of things about a phenomena, about a thing. There is also a possibility, as was depicted in a video, of creating courses and taking courses on national repository. There are workspaces for the users on digital repository. So all these kind of possibilities were just demonstrated in 30 seconds in the promotional video. Apart from promotional things, there are other forms of resources, digital content which a teacher can use in their teaching learning, and which communicates a lot to the teacher. So the animation which I wanted to show you is also there on NCERT's YouTube channel, NCERT official. When you access this channel of NCERT, if you Google आग की खोज, so you will be able to see this video. It has a lot of views and it depicts how fire was discovered by the early humans. There is another video, Pahiya, which narrates how wheel was invented by early humans and how over centuries the wheel evolved, and what are the different versions of wheel which come into being in the process of their evolution, and which nowadays also exist, those different versions of wheel. And how, if we show children these small animation video, we can generate learning about the development of human civilization around these resources, because three earliest discoveries and invention, that is discovery of fire, discovery of wheel, and discovery of agriculture, changed the pace of the development of human civilization, because agriculture ensured a settled life to humans. Wheel fasten the pace of human life, they can very easily travel to far off places. And the fire, controlling fire, made human lead a more comfortable life. They were escaped from the threat of animals, wild animals, then when they used to stay in the caves. So all such sorts of learning can be generated around such small animations and videos. So there are photographs which we click when we visit places. So if we add pedagogical values to these photographs, so photographs can also be a very good learning resource, very good digital stories. And stamps, we have stamps also, postage stamps. Nowadays we don't send communication, we don't do communication by sending post, because we have email, but we have a whole legacy, historical legacy of having postage stamp. Now also it is there, but it is not in popular use, because we have mobile phones, because we have we can communicate using synchronous and asynchronous communication using digital technology. But the postage stamp which we have in the form of heritage can be used as a very good learning resource to generate learning. If we digitize all these stamp tickets, we can they can lead children to a lot of learning, because stamps are there on flora and fauna, there are on birds, there are commemorative stamps when a specific event takes place. So we can discuss about this stamp. Stamps are there on some historical events, historical personalities. So there was a very good, very fascinating stamp ticket which I came across while looking at a collection of a person, and it was based on Abhigyan Shakuntalam of Kalidas. And this stamp ticket was based on a painting painted by Raja Ravi Verma, which depicted Shakuntala, when Dushyant left Shakuntala in the jungle to go back to his kingdom, and he forgets about her. Then she was talking to two of her friends about what the king what feelings the king may be having about her. So it is a very fascinating, interesting digital stamp, and there is a shlok written at the bottom of the stamp. So for the subject like Sanskrit also, we can use digital technology and we can create digital content. On NROER, there are many audios and videos which are based on Sanskrit stories and Sanskrit on the concept of Sanskrit. So if a teacher of Sanskrit uses these digital content and builds learning around them, she will be able to generate very fascinating digital stories around it. So viewers, we have seen in this presentation, in this session, different forms of digital resources around which we can generate digital stories, and some of the important forms are mind maps, flow diagrams, timelines, audio, video, animations, cartoons, comic scripts, so on and so forth. There is no dearth of digital resources, but a teacher needs to think intelligently how she is going to use those digital resources, and she is going to build fascinating stories on the concept which she is going to teach in her class. So that was all about digital story telling. Thank you very much. Namaskar.